Now, when we think about space, our minds jump to rockets and astronauts, maybe even distant galaxies. But behind every single launch, every satellite zipping overhead, there's this incredibly complex and often really debated set of rules, space law. It's the invisible rulebook for humanity's greatest adventure, and we're about to pull back the curtain on how it was all put together.
So let me just ask you something right out of the gate. If you go straight up from where you are right now, where does your country's border end? Is it 10 miles up, 100, 1,000? It seems like a simple question, right? But it's actually one of the biggest puzzles in international law, and it gets right to the heart of everything we're talking about.
Because that's really the core of it all. How on earth do you write a rulebook for a place that, by its very design, no one can actually own? A realm that belongs to every single one of us, and yet to no one at all.
So what is space law? Well, at its core, it's pretty simple. It's the body of rules that governs what we do once we leave Earth. The whole point is to create a stable, predictable environment so we can all explore and use space for everyone's benefit without it turning into some kind of chaotic free-for-all.
Okay, but here's the thing. Before you can even start making laws for space, you have to agree on where space actually is. And as you might be surprised to learn, that's a question that still doesn't have one single universally accepted answer. See, way back in 1944, the Chicago Convention made one thing crystal clear. Every nation has total sovereignty over the airspace directly above its land and water. But here's the catch. The convention never, ever said where that airspace ends. It never answered that fundamental question, how high is up? And that brings us to the most widely accepted, though still unofficial, boundary, the von Karman line. It sits at an altitude of 100 kilometers, or about 62 miles up. The idea is that this is basically the point where the atmosphere gets so thin that airplanes can't generate lift anymore. Think of it as the conceptual line where flying stops and rocketing begins. So this whole debate really boils down to two competing ideas. On one side, you've got this spatialist approach. They want a fixed line in the sky, like the Karman line. It's all about where you are. But on the other side, the functionalist approach says, hey, forget the altitude, it's about what you're doing. Under this idea, if you're in a vehicle designed to go to orbit, you're doing a space activity, and space law applies, whether you're 10 kilometers up or 200.
So why the sudden urgency to figure all this out? Well, the answer, like so many things, is the intense political pressure cooker of the Cold War. That's when all this theory was forced to become reality at, well, lightning speed.
And you can just see how quickly everything happened. In 1957, the beep, beep, beep of Sputnik 1 changes the world overnight. Suddenly, an object launched by one country was flying over every other country on Earth. The world kind of freaked out, and just 1 year later, the UN scrambled to form a committee to deal with it. The race was on, and it all led to the single most important document in the history of space law.
And that document is the Outer Space Treaty. Seriously, you can think of it as the constitution for everything we do beyond planet Earth.
I mean, think about this. It was signed in 1967, at the absolute peak of the Cold War. The US and the Soviet Union, mortal enemies in pretty much everything else, actually sat down and agreed on the fundamental rules for this new frontier. It's a pretty remarkable piece of diplomacy when you think about it. So what does this treaty actually say? Well, when you look at its core principles, they're almost utopian. It says space belongs to all humankind, and it's free for everyone to explore. And this is a big one. No country can claim sovereignty. You can't just plant a flag on the moon and say it's yours. It also bans weapons of mass destruction in orbit and makes it clear that countries are responsible for whatever they launch. It's really a foundational text for peace and cooperation.
But that amazing treaty wasn't the final word. Nope, it was just the beginning. It was the bedrock, the foundation upon which a whole, more detailed body of law was about to be built over the next decade.
And what you get is this family of 5 UN treaties that form the foundation of international space law today. You can see the logic, right? After the main treaty, they tackled the next problems: an agreement on how to rescue astronauts, a convention for what happens if a satellite falls on your house, one for keeping track of everything we launch, and finally, the Moon Agreement.
But, and this is a big but, here's the challenge. These laws were written over half a century ago. They were written for a world where only 2 superpowers were in the game. They never imagined a future with private space companies, satellite megaconstellations, and space tourists.
And this brings up some really thorny new questions. For instance, the Outer Space Treaty says you can't claim a celestial body. Okay, fine. But does that mean a private company can't mine an asteroid and own the resources it pulls out? The treaty is totally silent on that. which is why countries like the US are now passing their own laws to try and figure it out.
Or how about this one? Space junk. We're talking millions of pieces of human-made garbage orbiting the Earth, from old rocket bodies to tiny little flecks of paint, all moving thousands of miles an hour. They are a massive threat to every satellite and astronaut up there. But who's responsible for cleaning it up? Who pays? The original treaties just don't have a clear answer.
And what about traffic control? With companies planning to launch tens of thousands of new satellites, our orbits are getting seriously crowded. How do we manage all that traffic to stop catastrophic collisions? I mean, we have incredibly sophisticated air traffic control for planes, but we've got nothing even close to that for space. And we need it, like, yesterday.
And that really gets to the heart of the matter. The law isn't static. As one expert put it so well, the story of space law evolves right alongside the story of space exploration. It has to keep changing as our technology changes. So really, here's the ultimate takeaway. The legal framework that has kept the peace in space for more than 50 years is now being tested in ways its creators never could have imagined. As we stand on the edge of this incredible new era in space, the biggest question of all might be, can our ability to write the rules keep up with our ability to break new ground?